fit to be eaten. You're doing something, not just every time you cut, you're accomplishing something because you want it cut. It means that now you're making it fit to be eaten, which till now it wasn't fit to be eaten. And now by slicing the meat, now you can eat it. That's not usually the case. The meat could be eaten before you cut it up. So it's a rare situation where you're accomplishing something by cutting it up. We said, let's say a very hard meat, and you want to feed it to the dogs. Dogs can't chew. They're going to give him a big piece of meat. He won't be able to chew on it. So now by cutting it up into small pieces, they'll be able to chew on it. So now you're making it fit for the dogs to eat. So now that's called accomplishing something, meaning making it fit to be eaten, and then it won't be permitted on Shabbos. Because then we're going to say that's grinding. Because in other words, if the grinding is actually preparing the food, it's actually doing something, now the dogs can actually eat it, that's grinding. So even if you don't accomplish, even if the food is in a regular situation, vegetables that you're cutting up, you can eat it before and after also. But why is that considered grinding? Because that's how it was in the Mishkan. In the Mishkan, it was by things that come from the ground. So therefore, anything that comes to the ground doesn't make a difference. Making it fit. Of course, you're not making it fit. You can eat it the way it is. But that's how it was in the Mishkan. So something that comes from the ground is under the prohibition of grinding. Something that doesn't come from the ground, then we say, hey, this wasn't in the Mishkan. It's really not called grinding. Oh, but it's a hard piece of meat, and by cutting it up, now before that the dogs couldn't eat it. Now the dogs would be able to eat it. Now you did something to the food. You made the food sort of edible for the animals. Oh, okay, so that's called grinding. Now you can't do that. Because now it's malacha, because as a result of cutting it up, you're doing something to the food. See the difference?
What about feeding little kids? Like a child and being able to eat it, like an instance to be kind of really small.
Right. So
should you like shredded part or
so if it's for a child that needs to eat, that's different. Like mashing it. It says you could do it for a child. A child can do it, but it should be done close to the time of eating. Because there is that, we spoke about that leniency, the pain that says you could always do before the time of eating. We don't rely on it. Talking about for kids and they need to eat. And essentially it is, the food itself is edible, but the point is for the kids, they can't eat it, so you do it for them right before the time of eating. That's a very good point. It should be done before. It shouldn't be done too much in advance. Before the time of eating doesn't mean right away. Like when we spoke about separating. It means that you're going to eat now. It doesn't mean second before, it could be a few minutes. The time you need it prepared, so then it's okay. Yeah. Actually, the Rebbe speaks about case of chewing, but it's the same. If the Rebbe says that you're allowed to chew for a child. Yeah, but chewing, okay, it's not practical. You can't chew. No, chewing is also considered grinding. So if you're not preparing it for that, sometimes the mother would take the food and chew it a little bit before you give it to the child to make it to soften it. So it could be done if you're feeding it to the child, but if not, you shouldn't chew it. Don't just chew it for nothing. Okay. Anyways, it's not. Yeah.
sorry, so I don't really understand. So okay, like things that grow from the ground, you're not allowed to grind, like that's small. But things like chicken, like that poultry that you had, you are allowed to cut small.
Right, because it's only prohibited what was done in the Mishkan. In the Mishkan, it was things that go from the ground. Being it doesn't come from the ground, so to start with, initially, there's no prohibition of grinding.
Oh.
But if it's a piece of meat that you want to feed to the dog, it's a hard piece of meat, and you're for sure not eating it, it's too hard. But it's good for the dogs. But for the dog, it's a little too hard. If you cut it to pieces, then the dogs could chew on it. So now by you cutting it up, you're making it fit.
Oh, so
Yeah,
like to make it better, kind of.
So you're improving, you're making the food sort of edible for the dogs. So now you prepared the food. You did something to the food. That's called now the nature of malach is to accomplish something. Like even in the simple definition of grinding, if you put the malach of grinding on the side, it's not about grinding. It's not about grinding. Okay, wheat flour, they're grind wheat. When you grind wheat into flour, you're accomplishing something. Oh yeah, right. So in essence, that's what grinding is all about. However, in terms of Shabbos, because it was done in the Mishkan, I think it's done in the Mishkan is privilege. We don't say, well, didn't change the tomato stays the same taste, it could chew anyways. But that's how it's done in the Mishkan. But if it's not exactly like it was done in the Mishkan, then we say it's still grinding if you're accomplishing something by grinding it. Because in the Mishkan, when they ground the herbs, they accomplished something. The herbs had to be ground into flour, so then it can make it into paste, and then it could boil it and make the dye. So now when you are taking the meat and making it, cutting it into pieces that the dogs could eat, and now you're accomplishing something, that was also in the Mishkan. When they did grinding in the Mishkan, there was an accomplishment. It wasn't just, they weren't dicing vegetables there. The herbs that were ground, that's what they needed. They needed to have that flour, whatever, the powder, so they could make a paste out of it and then boil it and then have the dye. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we spoke about, what about mashing? Mashing banana, mashing avocado. Is this considered grinding? You want to mash an avocado, make avocado, fresh avocado salad on Shabbos. So you take the avocado and you want to mash it. So how do you mash it? You mash it with
The
back of the spoon, the back of a fork, and it works pretty good. It does the job, and you're allowed to do it. There's no issue. And the same thing is also, if let's say you want to, let's say crush, you have, let's say cookies, and you want to crush it because you want to use it for an ingredient, you want to mix it into something, so you want to take the cookies that you baked and you want to crush it, and so also you have to crush it with the back of a really? Yeah, you need to use the back of a fork to crush a cookie? Or could you crush it with your hand?
Oh, you could crush them.
You could crush it with your hand because there's no grinding, because there's no grinding by cookies, by cake, by bread, because it was already ground. It was already ground. What is bread? It's made out of flour that was already ground. So there's no issue with grinding it. So you can do it. So you can do it the regular way. Just there's no problem. Okay, so this is grinding, and then there is discuss a little bit about kneading, lush. So you can't. So the malach of lush, which was kneading, so in lush, there's two parts of the malach of lush when it comes to kneading. Let's say the practical example is you want to make for babies, for infants, you take the powder, you mix it with the milk or with the soy milk, whatever liquid you're using, and you're creating the baby, right? So the way to do it is, how do you do it on Shabbos? What's the way to do it? You have to do it with a shinui, right? You do it with a shinui. Oh, by the way, so just go back to grinding for a second. So by grinding, we said you're allowed to use the back of a fork. You use the back of a fork, the back of a knife, also to cut cucumbers or tomatoes into very tiny pieces. You can use the back of a fork, and you're gonna cut the tomatoes and cucumbers. Tomatoes and cucumbers, to cut it to very thin pieces, that's considered grinding, right? According to all opinions. So you could use the back of a to cut, smash, break into tiny pieces the tomatoes and the cucumbers. You're allowed to do that? What? No, huh? What do you say? You can't, huh? And what do you say?
It wouldn't work.
It says, good, it's because it's a little hard, but if you want it, let's say you decide to do it that way, you want to make it into very tiny pieces. You don't want to make it thick. You want it to be very thin, and you're not allowed. So when you use the back of a fork to pound it and make it into very tiny pieces, the cucumber, the tomato. So you're allowed to do that? No, huh? No. Yes. Yes, you're allowed. We said you're allowed to grind with a sheena. Practically, it comes up when it comes to mashing. That's where it works. That's what people are interested in using that sheena. But halachically, you can use it for anything. And that we said is called a shinui gadol, a big shinui. It's not a regular shinui. It's an unusual type of shinui because it's usually you grind with a specialized utensil. Now, a step below a regular utensil would be a knife because people usually regular utensil. Now you're not even using a knife, you're using the back of a knife, the back of a fork. That's called a shinui gadol. Where's the shinui gadol? It's a big change, and even though usually you can't do things with a big shinui, but I'm sorry, even though usually you can't, don't allow you to do things with a shinui, but being that it's a shinui gadol, it's a big change, then you're allowed to do it. So that works for everything. It's just not practical. Usually people use it for bananas and avocados. That's where it's practical. Okay. Now getting back to lush. So kneading. So lush. There's two parts to lush. What are the two parts of lush, of kneading?
Putting the ingredients together.
Putting it together, combining it, and mixing it. It's two parts to the malacha. Each part of the malacha has to be done with a shinui. Now, why are we allowing you to do it with a shinui? If it's prohibited by the Torah, you're not allowed to do it even with a shinui. Why is it allowed to be done in an unusual way if it's prohibited? So, when is it prohibited to do kneading by the Torah? If you're doing it, if you're making it into a what? A thick batter. If it's a thick batter, like a dough, like matzo ball, something that's thick, then it's prohibited by the Torah. But if you're not making it thick, you're making it loose, like a cake batter, a pancake batter, loose, then it's not prohibited by the Torah, it's just prohibited rabbinically. And if it's just prohibited rabbinically, the Chachamim allow us to do it with a shinui with an unusual way, which is that we do a shinui in how we combine ingredients, and then we do a shinui how we mix ingredients. So if you usually put in the flour and the powder, you can't flour. You have to let flour that's mixed. You can't make the dough job. No flour. Putting flour, then the liquid, and then the powder. And then when you mix it, you also don't mix it in the regular way, but you do it in an unusual way. And what's an example of an unusual way to mix it in? Mix it with?
Like the
crisscross, the back of the spoon. You could shake it, your hands, and looking. So or you could just pour it from one bowl to the other bowl. That those are considered the shina, and that's how you're allowed to do it.
You can only use the shinoi for the thin batter, or for the thick batter.
For the thin batter, no, for the thick batter you can't, because shina only works with something that's prohibited rabbinically. It's rabbinically prohibited, so that the same chachamim who prohibited say, okay, we're going to lie do it unusual way. Something that the Torah prohibits, the chachamim don't allow to with the shina.
Mhm.
What are other examples of lush? Spoke about, there's other examples we mentioned. We spoke about
No, but there's one that's like it's both, and then you're not mixing.
we spoke about if the oil flows to the top, you open up a jar of hummus or tahini, whatever, and this oil on the top, then you're allowed to mix it, because if it was already mixed, it just separated itself. And we spoke about that if, let's say you have, let's say, vegetables that are sliced very thin, and you want to mix it with vinegar, so that's not really called a mixture, because it doesn't really blend together. So it's not really considered kneading. But we said you should not do it vigorously. If you do it vigorously, that should not be done. But very strong like that should be avoided. And then let's say mixing banana, let's say you mash a banana in an unusual way, like we said, and now you want to mix it with juice, with, I don't know, whatever people put, orange juice, you want to mix it together. So over there, also it should be done with machining, that's also considered a form of kneading, even though it is not definitely considered kneading. It's actually discussed. Is it really considered mush kneading? Because what is really mush? Mush is really when you take powder, like solid powder and liquid, and it blends together, you bring it together. However, when you are mixing banana, let's say, and a liquid, an orange juice, let's say, whatever, you're not really bringing it together. It's not like there's banana pieces and this liquid and it's brought together. The mashed banana is holding together pretty much. It's holding together. You're adding the juice into it, okay. But the juice is not really bringing the banana and the liquid together, because the banana is already holding together. So it's not even a definite situation of lush. That's one thing to say. It's not really considered lush, because lush means that the liquid is connecting two things together. It's not bringing two things together, not bringing the powder and the liquid together. It's mixing into the banana, and now it's mixed with the banana. But it's questionable, and some say you should be careful. So the best way is to also do it with a shinoi in an unusual way. That's the better way. But if someone does pour liquid into the banana and mixing it together, it's not, you can't say that it definitely desecrating Shabbos, because some opinions say that it's not an issue. Okay, it's pretty much the halachas of lush. Any questions about this? No. Okay, so the next malacha. So really, I want to talk more about medicine and Shabbos. Maybe we'll start now a little bit. We can continue. It's really connected to the malacha of toichin, grinding. There's a whole chapter in Shulchan Aruch that discusses about using medicine on Shabbos. Initially, you're not allowed to use medication on Shabbos. Obviously, in life-threatening situations, if someone is sick, very sick, he's in bed, someone has an infection, there's many situations you're allowed to use medicine. But the Chachamim, our sages, prohibited us from using medication in regular situations. So let's say someone's a little under the weather, feeling so well, he's But he's functioning. Walk, he can go places, he's by the meal, but he's not feeling well. He's not along to the weather. His stomach ache, his stomach is bothering him, this, that. He wants to take some medicine. You're not allowed to take medicine on Shabbos. And the reason is, Chacham prohibit us to take medicine because there's a concern that you might come to grind herbs. We spoke about the question of grinding. You might come to grind the herbs. What herbs? The medication, they used them with different types of herbs, and the way they prepared the medication was by grinding it. It was very common to grind herbs to make medicine. So I have a concern that you might come to grind, they prohibited medicine on Shabbos. These days it's not so common, and there is actually a whole discussion. Some opinions feel that perhaps, not for sure, some opinions feel that perhaps these days the prohibition doesn't apply anymore. Because it's not common, it's not common these days for people to grind herbs for medication. So therefore, there's reason to say that the prohibition doesn't apply these days. There's a whole discussion. Usually a prohibition continues even though the reason is not around, but there are some exceptions to the rule. It's a whole lengthy discussion, I'm not going to go into it. But there is an opinion that says that it could be, he's not sure, it could be that these days the prohibition doesn't really apply, but we have to be strict, nevertheless, because could be the prohibition still applies, so we still keep that prohibition of not using medicine on Shabbos. However, because he says, because there's a doubt whether a medication applies, the prohibition applies these days, he says, in the case of doubt, one can be lenient. Now, what does it mean in case of doubt? So to understand that, I have to explain something else. In what situation are you allowed to use medication of Shabbos? So someone is in the status of what's called a chayla she'ein bo sakana. Someone is in the status of what's called chayla she'ein bo sakana. What does it mean, chayla she'ein bo sakana? Chayla means a sick person. She'ein bo sakana. What's she'ein bo sakana? Anyone? Huh? She'ein bo sakana. No. So a sick person that's not in danger. Okay, this is a classical term in halacha. Learn this term. Chayla she'ein bo sakana. Now, what does it mean, chayla she'ein bo sakana? What does it mean? What does it mean? That means a sick person is not in danger. No. So if you're not feeling well, you're not under the weather, you have a cold, you're not feeling well, but you're not in bed, you don't have fever, you function, you go to shul, you go places. That's called chayla she'ein bo sakana. Technically, you say, yeah, he's sick, he's not in danger. But this very specific, this term specifically describes a certain status. It's referring to a person who is sick, not feeling well. He's actually sick. In bed, yes, fever, he's very weak, he can't function. It's referring to such a person. But he's not in danger, not life-threatening, but he's sick. He's in bed. In other words, if he's in bed, or a person who feels very weak, he feels he wants to be in bed, he feels like he should be in bed, it's the same thing. It's that status of chayla she'ein bo sakana. And then, if the chayla she'ein bo sakana, Chacham allowed to use medication. Allowed to use medication. And also, if needed, no, not just, you're allowed. If needed, you want to tell a guy, you want to tell a non-Jew to do malacha, to do something that's prohibited by the Torah, a isum in our Torah. You're allowed to tell a guy to do for this sick person. So it's something that's necessary, that he needs, not just, I'm allowed to tell him, I'm going to tell him to do things that I don't really need. Something that he needs to help him. You're allowed to tell directly a non-Jew, something that's prohibited by the Torah. Also, if needed, if necessary, a person who's in that status, and it's not so practical these days, as I'll explain, but there is, if a person is in that status and he needs a guy to cook for him food, because say, want to cook them, right? It's by the Torah to cook, it's not to cook them. But if the guy is going to cook food to him, it's going to be bishalakum. How's he going to be allowed to eat it? Because he's a chayla shem sakana, it's okay, he's allowed to eat bishalakum. Right, it sounds very strange, but what? Exactly. Because so we're discussing a specific situation back in the days when now Baruch Hashem, it's very different. We live differently. The food is more abundant. It's not like it used to be. Then Shabbos, barely any food. He's sick. He needs to eat. Food needs to be cooked. He asked the guy to cook for him. He's sick. He's not feeling well. Yeah. So that came. He asked the guy to cook for him. So the food is bishalakum. It's okay because he's in that status. He's allowed to have bishalakum. Obviously, this cannot be just applied these days. Just like you're sick. You have can eat bishalakum. This food. You can have bishul yourself. It's not. It's unusual that this is going to happen these days, but theoretically, there can be such a situation. There's some nursing homes that use this leniency, whether they use it correctly or not, there's different discussion, but they've used the leniency for the nursing home, the Shabbos, because people in nursing home are usually many people in that status, and food has to be prepared. They have non-Jewish workers working there, so they're cooking the food. So many times they will use this leniency, saying, "Oh, they're sick, you don't even worry about bishul akum." But it's not so simple because you could organize it in a way. You have a system where a Jew is there. It's not like, "Oh, we're stuck now. We have a situation now. The person needs food. What do we do?" The nursing home, they have a system. They could set it up a certain way, but whatever. It's maybe sometimes it is justified. I don't know, but this giving you another example how it's sometimes used these days. Now, having said that, I said before that because the prohibition of using medication is questionable, questionable is maybe not a good term because you walk away thinking, no, it's questionable. No, more accurately, it's brought down that it's possible that these days the prohibition doesn't apply, but you still have to be strict, not using medication at Shabbos. In a case of doubt, you can be lenient. What does mean a case of doubt? If someone is in doubt, if he is this status or not, because what is the status of Cheshvan Sakana? Then he's not feeling well. He has a migraine, he can't function, he's in bed. He has the flu, and he's in bed. There's a virus, he's in bed. He has fever, he's in bed. He's very weak, he just wants to lay down. As opposed to a person who is not in bed, he's functioning. There can be cases where it's like in between, right? It's not like everything is not exactly like that. There's from 1 to 10. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then there's going to be somewhere in between where the person is saying, I was going to ask you, you felt you want to be in bed? Yeah, I think I'd rather be in bed, but no, it's okay. I'll sit by the table. There can be cases where you're not sure what's your stance. So it's brought down. The Taisa Shulchan brings down that if a person has a doubt in which category he's in, being that there is a discussion, it could be the prohibition of medication doesn't apply these days. So he says you could be lenient and the person can take medication. So if a person suspects he is in that status of chayla shem b'sakana, then he's allowed to use medication. Any questions? Yeah.
What about if you're, I don't know, taking antibiotics for like 12 days And by the point.
If you take antibiotics, usually you're taking it because you have to take it.
Yeah.
You have an infection, you have something that you must take, so that you have to take. You don't have there's no real option for this. Besides, there is a leniency when it comes to medication in general. That's leniency that can be used if necessary, and that is that even in situations where a person is not in the status of taking medication, but if you already started taking medication before Shabbos, you could continue into Shabbos. There is such a leniency that's people use. It's sort of accepted, which would mean that the whole discussion of medication on Shabbos is if all of a sudden on Shabbos you decide, oh, I need medication. My stomach is bothering me. I want to take something, different things that people take, or I have a bit of a headache. I want to take, all of a sudden, you want to take some medication for something. But if you already started before Shabbos and you're continuing, there is a leniency to continue. And if a person, it's a leniency. It's not a leniency that should be used just like that, if not necessary. If it's not necessary, it should be avoided. But if a person feels it's important for him, even though he's not in the status, but he already began to take before Shabbos, he could continue into Shabbos. Yeah. What about supplements? Okay, one at a time. Supplements. What do you want to know about supplements? Which supplements you should use?
At the end of the day, supplements, you're not gonna die or whatever if you don't take it for one day.
So here's the thing. To make it very simple, it works like this. Person takes supplements every single day, rain or shine. In other words, make a difference how he feels. This is it. This is like he davens every day, so no, I shouldn't compare it. I mean, this is what he does. He does every day. It doesn't make a difference how he feels. He feels this is important for him, and he does this every single day. Then he could also take on Shabbos. This, I assume there are those opinions that are strict, that to say to avoid it, but halachically it's totally accepted. You do it every day, that means you're not taking medication. It's not medicinal. You take it even if you're not feeling well. You take it every single day. This is what you do. So that's fine. If a person only takes it when he's under the weather, now he's taking it, now it becomes an issue. Now you're asking if you already began taking it before Shabbos to continue into Shabbos? That's what you're asking? No, okay. I won't answer.
About if your medicine is not in the bottom, there's liquid, cereals, and gum and things like that.
No medicine. When you say medicine, it's not just a pill. Medicine includes what? They prohibited medicine because you might come to grind. It's not specifically a pill. To make back then to prepare medications was done through grinding. So it applies to all medications. All medications are under prohibition.
Including my first, but not.
It doesn't matter about the grinding the pill, and if it's a tablet that you could grind, why would you grind it anyways? It's not about to prepare the medication. To prepare it, they would have to grind it. There's nothing to do with a pill, right? Not about taking the pill that you're using. By the way, a pill you're allowed to grind because it's already ground. The prohibition is that to prepare, to prepare the medication, they would grind herbs to make the medication. The medication didn't ended up in different formats. Yeah. Another question? Any?
Oh, I wanted to ask, if I have to take antibiotics, I can tear like the packages that have letters on them to get the medication out.
Here, none of the letters.
I can, because if they're the ones that pop out.
There's only letters?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Really, you should do it before Shabbos.
Okay.
If you didn't, and you really, the question is if you didn't and you really need it, if you really need it, Offhand, my answer would be, if you can have a goy open it for you, that's not practical, then you do it with a shina, the unusual way. Because if you need it, I can talk more about this, I think it's going to be too much at a time, but I'll just throw it in. The chayil shem v'sakana, the status, if you have no non-Jew to do things for you and it's necessary, the Jew could do it himself in an unusual way. So if you need that medication, antibiotics, which is important, you have no other option. Again, you should open it before Shabbos. But if you didn't, you open it in an unusual way. Okay? Continue to Shem on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Everyone. Looks like
Will they be out? Will they be burning on the part?